Hi everybody, I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. One decision reframes much of the political landscape and many elections this fall. The first fallout from the Supreme Court's abortion ruling. And cases involving debt problems skyrocketed in Lubbock, but important decisions by county workers that may bring hope to a lot of people.
From the studios of KAMC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd.
Thanks for joining us also this week. What have you done for me lately? Understand that if you're going to be an elected official these days, you get very little credit for good work done in the past. It's a very here and now world. Take Texas Senator John Cornyn, for instance. An A+ rating with the National Rifle Association told senators any sort of weapons ban was a non-starter in the latest gun safety negotiations in Washington, but Cornyn mercilessly booed at the Texas Republican Convention last week, presumably just for being part of the Senate's gun safety negotiations. Congressman Arrington did not vote for it in the House, but this post-Uvalde legislation is now moving to the president's desk to become law, with enhanced background checks for young buyers, no red flag laws unless states want it, and money for school-based mental health services, among other things. But maybe a real school or gun safety isn't just talking about the same issues again and again, but instead making sure existing plans and laws and school door locks actually work.
We say you should have a security plan. Check the box. Had a meeting, got a security plan. We ask that you should harden your assets, but we really don't give any specificity to what that should look like, nor funding to follow. So what I hope that we do as a state that spends $9 billion in mental health arena, that we get out of what we say we're doing and look at what it's really doing at every level. Because I think as we go through this process, we're going to learn a lot of things that a lot of boxes were checked, but follow through was way short.
And it appears Senator Perry was right from the very beginning on those hearings. KAMC's Monica Madden has more from the Capitol.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine.
In powerful testimony lasting nearly 5 hours,
Terrible decisions were made.
the state's top law enforcement officer pulled no punches.
The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
He said 3 minutes after the gunman came onto campus, armed officers inside could have stopped him. In a photo obtained by the Texas Tribune, you can see these officers in the hallway. This is 12:04 p.m. Authorities did not storm the classroom until 12:50 p.m. The Cross says Incident Commander Pete Arredondo misled officers.
What officers were being told is the subject is contained.
And he revealed another devastating detail about the door.
I don't believe, based on the information that we have right now, that door was ever secured.
Before the shooting, a teacher reported her classroom door did not lock properly, and we learned the school's doors do not lock from the inside.
We set up a condition to failure in an active shooter environment.
In back and forth exchanges, senators expressed shock, grief.
Their silence turned into the most awful screams that you could imagine.
Now, lawmakers in McCraw placed the blame directly on the Uvalde school police chief. At one point, Senator Betancourt made his calls to Arredondo, who wasn't in the room, but he was pleading with him, saying, "Stop hiding and come speak to the Senate in public so Texans can hear." I want to point out that Arredondo was in the Texas Capitol building today, but he was testifying to the House Investigative Committee in private, not here in the Senate. At the Capitol, Monica Madden, back to you.
Monica, thank you. You know, we've talked to John Gibson as a local political candidate. Of course, he is also an attorney and now representing a Uvalde school employee. It's good to see you again.
Good to be here, Brian.
You know, this is the woman who in the first few days of the shootings was referred to as the person who left a school door propped open, allowing the shooter to get into that school. That later turned out not to be the case. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I should add, I'm representing her with a team of lawyers, and my representation is pro bono. So fancy legal word for free. I'm representing her for free in this terrible tragedy.
Yeah, and you know, We're not going to use her name, of course, because there are mean people out there who don't understand the situation. Let's start with the emotional state of this woman, and really the teachers there as well, and everyone in that town. Where are they at right now?
That town is just so shaken up. I mean, as you can imagine, small town, something like this happens. I have never seen the kind of trauma that is present in that town, and especially that is present in this woman.
Let's go through a little bit of her story from that day. Now, she was out in the parking lot, saw the shooter crash his car, and as I understand it, went to basically call for help. Is that right?
Correct. It's the end of the school year, and they were having parties and stuff, and so someone had gone to a store to go get some supplies. She was outside with a cart to go and bring those supplies in, sees the vehicle crash and thinks in her head, oh, someone's had a heart attack or something. She runs in to go tell them, then goes back out to check on the person, and that's when he opens fire. She then runs back in, the door is closed behind her, and she tells everyone there's an active shooter, start taking precautions.
Okay, so at that point, she's on the phone with 911 as I understand it.
Correct.
And she basically goes to try to hide where she can, is that right?
Correct. She had an office there in the building, and so she was hiding in her office.
Sure. Now take me through the emotional trauma of that point, because she's probably there for quite a while.
Oh, certainly, yeah. She was there for a long time. And she's in her office, and just only a few feet from her, she can hear the officers out in the hall, and she's right there. And yet she can't move. She doesn't know what's going on out in the hall. She can hear voices. She can hear things going on, but she's there hiding there in her office while the shooter is shooting, and then while the law enforcement's arriving and they're doing their things, and she's having to go and experience all that.
My goodness. Now, and eventually this goes obviously from bad to worse, and then they're able to come and find her. What is her state like at that point, and where is she now as far as her health?
Everybody always thinks they know what it's like, but you don't know until it happens to you. And in her situation, she couldn't function. The officers were telling her, okay, ma'am, it's safe, you can get up. And she's saying, I know what you're telling me, I can hear what you're telling me, but my body won't function. And she just laid there in fetal position, and they had to carry her out like a baby because her body would not function. It had shut down.
The fear in the whole situation in the moment. My goodness. And she's still having problems at this point.
She's having terrible problems. She cannot talk about this event without having severe reaction to it.
And your specialty, looking into your role here, your specialty is more into workers' comp claims and those types of things. Would you say there's an entire team as well working on this?
Right. So what happened initially was I reached out to the school district's lawyer and said, hey, we're going to have a claim here. And the school district's lawyer said, well, we've got a small rural school district, and unfortunately there's just no money here for these kinds of things. No one plans for these kinds of trauma, this kind of event to happen.
Sure.
And so there was a need for someone such as myself with expertise in this area to come in and make the kind of claim that can be made such that this woman can be taken care of.
Yeah. And I can imagine, especially with the head of Texas DPS initially saying that, for all practical purposes, it would have been, at least in some weird realm, her fault that the shooter was able to get in initially. Again, that turns out not to be true. I can't even imagine what she and family members are taking on social media, the way, as mean as that can be at that point, which only adds to the problem.
Right. It's a small town, and everybody's looking for answers, and everybody's pointing fingers every which way.
And angry with the situation.
And of course. And she left town initially, got out of town, and has family members to kind of protect her from that. But at the same time, her family members were then getting all that vitriol and all that stuff. But she's back in town now, and she's having to deal with this.
Has she spoken with DPS, or Texas Ranger State investigators, about what she saw and did that day?
I'm the only one. All communications go through me.
Okay. So,
and I would say that I have spoken with the school district's attorney. I have spoken with certain state authorities, but DPS and those types, no.
Do you know if she plans on continuing to teach there or anywhere at this point after everything she's gone through?
Her most important need right now is to get very, very in-depth, intensive psychological counseling, and we need to get that taken care of first.
There are still a surprising amount of questions still to be answered, but there are some people like your client who may very well have some real claims against people just from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy, very pleased that Representative Burrows is heading up the legislative investigation into that. But one thing I would say that we need is, if in Texas we're going to militarize everything, we need a fund that takes care of these things, because we can't foresee when these events happen.
Sure.
And small rural school districts, municipalities, counties, they can't plan for these things. So there has to be some type of a state fund that takes care of these kinds of issues, because without it, you're just leaving people just to flail for themselves.
Militarized, I mean arming more teachers and things of that nature.
Yeah, and that was probably
Sure.
too
Well,
strong a language on my part. But
it's part of it. Yeah,
But,
interesting.
I mean, it's no secret that in Texas we love our guns.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have everybody armed, well, then we need a state fund that takes care of when these kinds of things happen.
Pass along our good wishes to her as well from everyone here in Lubbock. John Gibson, an attorney for an employee there in Uvalde. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks.
And coming up, what this week's abortion decision means to a lot of people, and county workers earning a national award for how they cleared hundreds of cases from court dockets and helped get a lot of people their financial lives back. 5 Good Minutes with Justice of the Peace Lance Cancino, next on Talking Points.
You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
Okay, and if you read Gabe Monte's article in the AJ recently, you know that this man and others like him are about to receive a big award. So let's spend 5 good minutes with District 4 Justice of the Peace, Lance Cancino. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Bryan.
Let's go back to the start of this that we're kind of talking about today. The JP courts had started seeing a lot more cases involving debt collection, am I right?
Well, we've seen a lot of cases all along, but we had a very low rate of actual collection on these cases. And that's basically because once a judgment is passed, there goes into a whole enforcement category, and unless the plaintiff pursues on it, generally a lot of collection doesn't get done.
Gotcha. So, I guess there are probably a lot of layers and reasons as to why that all that was happening, but they also raised the monetary cap, I saw, on the JP cases too, and that probably added to the situation, right?
Well, yes, we're getting a lot of cases. We're up to $20,000 now. When you consider inflation, small claims used to be $500, but inflation over the years has raised the value of $500 to now $20,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so much different kind of situations in a lot of cases. So how do we get some of these cases now pushed into the Office of Dispute Resolution?
What we did is, working with the Office of Dispute Resolution, and Gene Valentini is the person in charge of that office, and he has been the archangel in getting this accomplished. He pushed the idea and presented it to us, a way to increase collections and to make our courts actually mean something in many cases.
And so a lot of those cases now are being pushed into his office for essentially mediation.
That's correct.
Right.
Any case where there is an answer from the defendant is immediately sent over to dispute resolution, so it can go into mediation. And most of those cases, we're seeing a very high ratio now, close to 80%, maybe a little bit in excess of 80% now, are settling out, and we're actually seeing collections occur, whereas before it was maybe in the 20 to 25% range.
Wow. And so, and I would imagine too that mediators probably have a little more leeway on sort of massaging both sides to a settlement than a judge or a
much
justice
more
of peace
flexibility.
would be.
Yes. The judge in court, you are very much restricted. You can't take sides, and so intervening on one side or the other and making a suggestion is not really possible in court. But in a mediation situation, you still have all sorts of legal requirements, but there's a lot more leeway to actually make adjustments, and oftentimes the two parties can come together then and decide on something versus this adversarial relationship that we have in the courtroom.
And Lubbock County pays these mediators to sort of come in and help with all that?
Yes, yes.
See, I would think that would be a lot cheaper than any sort of trial situation too.
It really is, it really is. When we go to a jury trial, it becomes a very expensive proposition, time-wise, juror-wise, taking citizens out of useful, productive work to come in to judge a case is something that we would like to avoid. And with mediation, we can take care of that a lot quicker, a lot more simply, and it's actually, improving our financial situation at the county, as well as, I think, providing the public a lot better form of justice.
So what kind of volume moves through there, say, on a monthly or basis?
I would estimate that we probably have 100 filings per month per JP precinct. It varies a little bit.
And there are 4 of those?
There's 4 of them,
yeah.
yes.
Wow.
So we're running a lot of cases through on a monthly basis. Those that receive answers where the defendant actually replies in the case get sent over, and that's roughly half to a third. And the other, those that do not answer, those have automatic default judgments brought eventually.
Yeah.
And so that defendant will have a judgment against them that's on their record, hurting them when it comes time to get credit, things like that.
And it's probably relieving some of the overall COVID case back up too there at the county.
Yes.
I could imagine some of these being a big part of that.
Well, it slowed down, obviously COVID slowed down a lot during that 2-year period, and so we are catching up significantly on that.
So because this is doing so well, now an award for the JPs and everyone at the county for what this is going on. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, we are the pioneers. Nationwide, this is the first set of JP courts in Texas that have done this, and nationwide we are way out in front. And so this is really a template that is going to be looked at by courts all across Texas and across the nation now. So it's really a spectacular achievement. I think a great improvement in justice in general for the public.
Pretty great. Now, the final seconds we've got here, if I'm someone with a debt dispute with, say, a credit card company or something like that, can I call my local justice of the peace or the Office of Dispute Resolution and get that ball rolling, or do we have to be down the legal road a little bit?
Well, what you need to do is you need to file an answer with the Justice Court.
Okay.
And when you file that answer, then we automatically refer that case to dispute resolution. And only if dispute resolution can't work out an agreement between the parties, then we will go to trial. But we're eliminating a very large amount of the trial basis, and that has really helped. So that's the first thing, is to answer. Anytime you get, obviously, a lawsuit, it's not a good day.
No.
But answer that, and that gets the ball rolling.
I'm telling you, getting the job done down with the county and everywhere else. Congrats to everyone involved and how this is going so far. We hope it keeps going. Justice of the Peace for Precinct 4, Lance Cancino. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And straight ahead, joy and anger over the same Supreme Court decision on one of the most polarizing political cases in U.S. history. A Lubbock perspective on the abortion ruling. Next on Talking Points.
It was the right call. I know it's not a popular call, depending on what perspective you're looking at it from, but that was the right call. It's the right call for different principles: federalism, states' rights.
I'm just pleased that we have a court that got it right and that honored and upheld the Constitution. That's certainly the oath that I took. It's a victory for the Constitution today.
State Representative Dustin Burrows also reacting to this week's Supreme Court ruling on abortion rights with a statement reading in part, "In Texas, the unborn will be finally protected for the first time in my lifetime. The Texas legislatures continue to strengthen services across the state to help women access health care both prior to and after the birth of their children. If more needs to be done, I welcome that conversation." Nearly 50 years of political and social upheaval over the subject of abortion took a new turn this week with that Supreme Court decision that now gives states the choice on whether or not to allow abortions within their own boundaries. In Texas, the trigger law means they'll be illegal here 30 days after the official judgment is issued. A massive win for pro-life folks, but strictly politically speaking, this could be another issue that electrifies Democrats into voting booths this fall, as it happened when they came out against President Trump. I know a lot of Republicans hope the November election will be more about inflation and gas prices, but plenty of time for that debate. So first, the local fallout from KAMC Claudia Puente.
Local organizations have been hard at work preparing for this moment. Many in celebration, while others anticipating the next move.
It's a huge day, and this is a day that we as a movement and as an organization have been working toward for nearly 50 years.
There is no sugarcoating this today. The ruling by the United States Supreme Court is devastating.
Texas for Life, a pro-life nonprofit, says they're using this time to strengthen their resources.
Increasing and protecting the Alternatives to Abortion program, reforming CPS, streamlining the adoption process, all these kinds of things that just fully will make our state pro-life.
Whereas Planned Parenthood of Texas says the fight starts today to bring back abortion access.
There's been nothing more inhumane, cruel, and unethical for me as a physician than denying people the health care they seek in their time of need in my entire medical career. And yet today, the Supreme Court of the United States has issued a ruling that moves the needle even further in harming pregnant people and inflicting trauma on everyday folks trying to do what they need.
Both organizations still working to provide resources to all women affected by the decision.
We're not done yet. So celebrating today and gearing up for what the future holds, because there's still a lot of work to do.
We're not going away now. Planned Parenthood is here for good. Our family planning services just became all the more essential.
That is KAMC's Claudia Puente reporting, and we'll be back with a final word. Before we go, this is the last Talking Points with me as your regular host. It's been a lot of fun, but truthfully, I'm not getting any younger here, and there are projects here and away from the TV station that I'd also like to work on. Now, I'll still contribute to this here and there and see you on the news, of course, but Ryan Chandler will do a really good job taking over this show. And as always, send us a comment on our KAMC News Facebook page and at everythinginlubbock.com. Just click Weekly Features and Talking Points to stream this and many of our past shows. And that's all of our time. For all of us on Talking Points, we thank you for watching, and we'll see you right here again next week.